Hello, my name's Darryl, and welcome to this week's live on Thursday. These lives are supposed to be at 6 p.m. It's not 6 p.m. today, but it's okay because we're going to do an awesome topic. We're going to look at chords in a key for guitar. So this is how do you work out what key a song is in, or your own chords. Like, this is a really big part of guitar playing and soloing, because I love fretboard stuff and I love talking about soloing on this channel. But one thing that I think is really important for people who want to solo on the guitar to know is about the kind of music theory fundamentals, which is chords and keys. The guitar is a little bit unique. It's very unique compared to other instruments and how they would learn their chords and keys. So I think it's really important that we do guitar specific information for this. And I hope it kind of helps you out with this. So first things first, why on earth would you need to know chords and keys? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons you want to know chords and keys on the guitar. When you know, actually knowing chords and keys is just the same as knowing scales. So if you know your scale on the guitar, why would you want to know it? Well, you want to know your scale so you don't play a wrong note. You go, we're in G. Oh, cool. So when you're soloing, you don't play the wrong notes. That's why you practice your scales. Well, when it comes to chords and keys, that's an extension of those scales. And it's the chords that will fit with that scale. So for every scale that you play, there are 7 chords that can go with that scale. There's 1 for every note in the scale. So there's 7 notes in your scale, in your major scale, and there's 7 chords that can go, 1 for every note. So when we have a G major scale, we don't just have to play G major, surprise, surprise. And so when you know what those chords are, it's a very predictable formula. You can reverse engineer songs and go, what key is this in? Oh, awesome, now I can solo over it. You can take your own music and you can take 2 chords or 4 chords that you've written and kind of figured out on your own and go, oh, here's some other options I have going on, and a whole bunch of other things. So first of all, I want to say that if you're watching this on YouTube right now, in the description below, what I've done is I've stuck a download which will help you with some of the fundamentals to help with this. It's to do with the major scale. You need to know your major scale really, really well in order to be able to understand what's going on. And if you get lost with what we're doing today, it's normally because you might not know your major scale well enough yet. So I just want to kind of plug that below, go download it, and you're going to help. It's going to have visuals that I haven't got with the live here today. Okay, cool. So the first thing we want to talk about is, okay, if we've got those chords, let's hear some examples of what this sounds like in chords. So if I'm in C major, the sound of the C major scale is, okay, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then that backwards, I don't know how to sing. Do, re, mi, fa, no, do. No, not going to happen. I can sing it though. I just can't do the Julie Andrews version. So we can have, with every single one of those 7 notes, of which we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. With the C major scale, I like the C major scale because it only has natural notes. So that means it goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. There's no sharps or flats. It's a great tool for us to use to work out what this is. And I'm just telling you, everything we do is a pattern. So once we know the pattern, it doesn't matter whether we're in C, we're in B, we're in F, we're in whatever. It could be in G double sharp. It's going to be the same. So first thing is I want you to notice how that lays out on the guitar as a single string. So we go, in this case, we go root, up 2 frets, up 2 frets, up 1 fret, up 2 frets, up 2 frets, up 2 frets, 1 fret. And so that's the first thing that you need to be really confident at. For my way of teaching people how to do this is your single string scales. If you don't know your single string scales really well, it's going to be difficult. So I would test you by making you write it down cold on a piece of paper and all sorts of other things. You need to know that single string scale really well. And then what we do next is we build chords on that. So let's talk about a chord. Now, a chord, the triads in this case, are built by taking 3 notes at a time from our scale. So in this case, if we've got our first 5 notes are C, D, E, F, and G, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we build our first chord by taking notes 1, skip a note, note 3, skip a note, and note 5. So we have C, E, and G. If this is, you know this stuff already, then good for you, but I'd still watch this just to refresh because it's going to help in a little bit when I go into the more in-depth stuff and the specific guitar hacks that we have. So that builds me C, E, G, and that's a C major chord. So my chord 1 of every major key is a major chord. Or in this case, we're in C major. That's a C major chord. Okay. Now to build chord 2, I take note 2 and I skip over note 3. I go to note 4. So we've jumped again. And I take over note 5. I go to note 6. So building a chord is taking the notes of our scale and then skipping over, taking the starting note. So chord 1, we did 1, 3, 5. Chord 2, we're going to do 2, 4, and 6. So in this case, I'm in my C major, and I've got D, F, and then A. So that's chord number 2 is D, F, and A, which I'm telling you now, you just follow along. You don't have to figure all this stuff out. I'm going to reveal it all to you as you go. Chord 2 is a minor chord, D minor. And yeah, as we go, I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. So you can make notes. The only thing that I would make a note on while you're doing this is, okay, chord 1 is major, chord 2 is minor. But I want you to understand the process because the process is important too. So I'm just going to show you how these are built. So chord 3 is E, G, so note 3, 5, and 7, which is E, G, and B, which is an E minor. So let's recap. We've got chord 1 major, chord 2 minor, chord 3 minor. Okay, good so far. Let's look at chord 4. So notes 4, 6, and then if we've gone to 6, and we want to skip over 7 for us to find 4, 6, then we're going to 1. So it's going to be 4, 6, and a root again, which is F, A, C. Chord 4 is F major, or major chord. Every chord 4 is major. Chord 5 is using notes 5, skip a note, 7, skip a note, and 2, which is G major. So far we've got beginning to sound like a scale played with chords, I think. Chord 6 is going to be note 6. Skip over the 7, we get a root, and then skip over the 2, we get a 3. So it's going to be 6, note, the root note, and a 3. So A is a 6. Our root note is a C because we're in C major, and our third is C, D, E, E. So we've got A, C, E, why I played the wrong note before. A, C, E is our next chord, which is an A minor chord. So 6 chords, always minor. So far we've got C major, so chord 1 major, chord 2 minor, chord 3 minor, chord 4 is major, chord 5 is major, chord 6 is minor, and then this last chord on the B note, we've got note 7, so that's going to be 7, skip over the root, 2, because we've got 7, 2, and 4 are the notes for this. So note 7 is a B, note 2 is C, D, and note 4 is an F. Hey, we've got someone watching on live. Hello, Simple Guitar. Cool channel. So when we're doing chord 7, we've got B, D, and F. You don't need to know this. I'm just kind of working this out along with you. But when they're B, D, and F, it sounds a bit different. So check out. You hear that doesn't sound like the major or the minor? That is a diminished chord. And it's just kind of, it's a bit of an ugly sounding chord. It has a slightly different composition, which I'm not going to go into in this specific video. But all you need to know is that in major keys, chord number 7 is always a diminished chord. And a way that you can play a diminished chord is to take a power chord. So if I find my B note, then I can play it by just taking a power chord and taking the middle note of that power chord down 1 fret. And it sounds pretty dark, all right? So let me play the whole scale now and let's recap what we've got. So if you're just watching now, we've got C major, which is chord 1. Chord 1 is always major. Chord 2, minor. Chord 3, minor. Chord 4, minor. Chord 5, minor. Chord 6, minor. Chord 7, diminished, pretty funky, and we're back to root again, which is major, so. All right, so that's what the chords sound like in one key. And what we've recap a little bit of what we've got is we've leaned on knowing major scale on a single string. So knowing that really, really well. Better than me, hopefully. So knowing that really, really well and being able to find them. And then the next piece of knowledge that you need to burn into your brain is knowing which chord goes with which number in that scale. So if I'm on note 1 and I want to build a chord, it's always a major chord. So I'm going to play a major bar chord there. Easy. Chord 2 is always a minor chord. So if I know what my note 2 is, and I know what my chord 2 is going to be a minor chord, all I do is I play a bar chord there. Chord 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, diminished, and then major. So now you can apply that to any other key. So say we could go to G major. Let's take a look at G major. As long as I know my single string scale. Okay, so as long as I know that single string scale, then I can apply the same thing. So chord 1 was, that's right, major. Chord 2, minor. So I can play a minor bar chord off it. Chord 3, minor. Chord 4, major. Chord 5. Okay. Now, once you get good at kind of going up and down in them, you're ready for songwriting. Like, you're ready to just use this in songwriting. So the most common chord progression of all time is probably to go from chord 1 to chord 5 to chord 6 to chord 4. So if we go back to our C major, chord 1 was a C major. chord 5 was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And just to chords 1, 4, and 5 are the major chords. So 1, 4, and 5, that's another way of thinking about it. 1, 4, and 5 are major, 2, 3, and 6 are minor, and then 7 is diminished. So 1, major, major is for the 5. Then we had chord 6, which was A, or I can go all the way up my scale. In fact, I should demo these in the scale. I'm doing a bad job here of demoing. So if I do them in the single string scale, so I go, okay, that's 1. Chord 1 is major. I go up my scale to chord 5. Then I go up. I've got chord 6, which I know is minor. And then I've got chord 4, which is major, because 1, 4, 5 are major, 2, 3, 6 are minor. Or you can memorize them in order. I think Brad stuck them in the chat. Thanks, man. So, So that's a common chord progression, but you can take any of those chords and play around with them, and you can get songwriting. And you can do it in all sorts of keys. So the cool thing about the guitar is that we can jump into any key and do the same thing. So that same chord progression is the same set of distances apart. If I even go to F major now, so if I find my F note, and I know my single string scale, not scale, which is what I just said. My single string scale, it's 1, 2, so root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. Chord 1, major. Chord 5, chord 6, and chord 4. Cool. So being able to do that all over your guitar, especially with bar chords, is very freeing and very important. Getting comfortable with it is good. Now, if you've been watching this whole time and you are like, yeah, I know it. Well, good for you, because you made it through like 17 minutes with working stuff you already know, which is cool. Good for you, and I'm very grateful for you sticking with me. Let's give you some stuff which is a bit more interesting. So more advanced uses of this are, if you want to be able to look at a song on a piece of paper and go, oh, cool. If you're a soloist, for instance, you want to be able to shred or improvise over this and go, oh, what key am I in? How do I know where my start note is? I know my scales, but I just can't work out what key the song is in. Well, one of the best ways to do that is by knowing your chords in the key really well. So from looking at your song, you can work out what key it's in just on paper without even listening to it. How would you do that? Well, and I say without listening to it, you still want to listen, because you should always listen a little bit to the song, because the final decision about what key it's in is always going to come down to your ear. But you can do most of the work with your brain. So why is that possible? Well, if we go back to our chords in a key, in C major, we had one major chord on its own. We had two minor chords next to each other here on notes 2 and 3. We have two major chords next to each other on F and G, or notes 4 and 5. And then we have one minor chord alone up here. So when you're looking at a song and you're playing a song, a great way to work out what key you're in is to search for two notes in the alphabet next to each other, like adjacent notes in the alphabet. They don't have to be next to each other in the song, but they have to be adjacent to each other in the alphabet, that are the same triad type. So if you've got two major chords next to each other, probably that's chords number 4 and 5, because that's the only place that they appear in the key. So if you know, oh, that's chords 4 and 5, it's not too bad to work back to where 1 is and go, oh, cool. So if you saw a song that's got F and G in, good guess is we're in C. And you can start soloing off in it. Likewise, if you see a song that has a D minor and an E minor in the same area, they don't have to be right next to each other. They could be chords separating them. But if they're there, probably a D minor and E minor, that's probably chords 2 and 3. Oh, we're still in C. So you can use this to reverse engineering. It's all about how well you know it rote. Like you want to know, and I'm not a huge fan of everything being rote learning on guitar, and it's much worse, by the way, if you were a trumpet player or a piano player. Those guys have to do a lot more rote learning. So in their case, they'd have to learn, okay, well, to learn their scales, they have to learn, what all the notes are in those scales. So for guitar, we have a bit of a Rubik's Cube to navigate, but there's some hacks, some little known tricks, to use all the marketing lingo. But there's some ways around doing that. So if you learn your single string scales, like rote, you got to know them really well. You should be able to write them down on paper. You should be able to sit on the guitar. You should be able to do your single string scales blind and know what note function you're on. Know you're on like note 1, I'm on note 5. And seriously, say this stuff out loud. And then number 2, you want to know your chords in a key rote. Like if I shout at you across the room, we're going chord 3. What's that? We go, it's going to go 1, 5, 6, 4 in F. You should be able to go, okay, cool. I know so you want to assimilate that knowledge. So the more that you practice it in tiny pieces, it's going to help. But with especially the chords in the key, you can do that while you're at a bus stop. Now I'm in lockdown in England, in London. I was told today, the most dangerous city in the world right now, London. So there is no bus stop journeys right now, but you can do it in between Netflix shows or whatever else you're doing in lockdown while you're stuck at home. You can practice these things. You should know them right. Now, this is the same process for if you were going to do the minor key or any other key. You're going to do like harmonic minor. There's all these different things, but it's the process that matters. Know your single string scale, and then we can build on it like a house with a foundation. But the foundation is, where are your root notes? Where are your single string scales? In order to practice those better, I would implore you, go get my 5 levels of major scale document. You can just download it. I'm sticking it in the link below. It's not there if you're on live, but it will be there after the fact. And it's really going to help you see how to lay out your scales better on the guitar, because that's going to help open up keys for you too, which become even more important the more that you solo all over the place, because it's not just about playing bar chords. We need to be able to do all of these with arpeggios. So an example of where this goes is if I'm able to solo a bit more later on. You can write melodic lines on the guitar without just thinking about kind of, okay, let me use a scale. That's no way to write melodies. The way to write melodies on the guitar is through thinking, okay, well, chords and melodic lines using arpeggios. So that's over chord 1. It's just an arpeggio with an extra note. Okay, so I'm just thinking chord function, then moving around with the arpeggios. That's where you go with this, but you really need solid knowledge of those single string scales everywhere in order to open that up. Let's take a look at the chat. I love scales. Hey, okay, thanks, man. I prefer scales too. Well, clearly, I'm just doing the wrong thing today. We're talking about chords. I guess we did a lot of scales too, so that's cool. You want to do minor. So minor, it's the same thing. So minor, you want to be able to do your single string scale on minor. In fact, let's go back to our C because we're on the same root then. So if I go C, the difference between minor and major scale on that single string scale is your third comes down 1 fret. So my first 5 notes are the same except for note 3 is down 1 fret. So instead of being on fret 7, it's now on fret 6. And the 6th note and the 7th note are also down 2 frets. So my first 5 notes are the same except for my third is moved down 1. And my top 2 notes are both moved down 1. So the whole thing sounds like this. Okay, and then as we kind of ascend it, the chords change to go with that. So we still do the same process: 1, 3, 5 for chord 1, 2, 4, 6 for chord 2, and 3, 5, 7 for chord 3, etc., etc., etc. I'll just tell you what they come out as, and if you want to write this down, you can. So this is chord 1 is minor, no big surprises. Chord 2 is diminished in this case. Notes 2, 4, 7. Chord 3, major. Chord 4, minor. Chord 5, minor. And chord 6 and chord 7 are major. All right, cool. So I'm just about done for today. We're coming up to the half-an-hour mark, and that is like a full TV show that I've just done. Full episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was a child with no advert breaks. That's a big deal. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and really what I want you to do if you want to practice some of this stuff is take the most basic part of it that you don't know, get it rote. Get it rote in your head. And if you want to expand the other way, then what you do is you take the principle and you start testing yourself. So, okay, do you know in every major key, can you shout out to me what all the chords and the keys are just off your head? If I go like F sharp major, what's chord 5? You know, it's a C sharp major, and you should be able to eventually, you do want to know them rote. We don't have to right at the beginning. So you push yourself where you're at, you have some fun, and I will see you guys on Saturday. I have a new video coming out that's already recorded, and next Thursday I am live again. I will see you then. Thank you so much for watching if you are still with me. Thanks, guys.